Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and thank you, Minister, for coming to the House. And again, congratulations on your new role. I wish you well with it. I'm very happy to be moving this bill in the Seanad tonight. This bill from my colleague Pearse Doherty received unanimous support in the Dáil, and I hope it can win the same support here tonight for second stage. Central to the urgency of this bill are the families waiting for this bill to be enacted. That is why we wanted this bill to be taken at all stages tonight. However, we do respect the fact that the Government and other senators have indicated they want to include amendments. But I would ask for your cooperation in prioritising it for the remaining stages as soon as possible. And there are families watching tonight and urging us to progress this bill and to put in place a time frame for it to be passed. Some of you probably come across families in your constituency offices who are locked out of the Financial Services Ombudsman system. The lockout clause, the so-called 6-year rule, is the main target for this bill. It will remove the rule that says that the consumer cannot make a complaint against a financial institution. It is a deeply unjust rule. Over the last 5 years, 3,000 people have been refused because of the rule. They are the official figures, but all sides accept that the real figure is much higher because people know about the rule and so they don't apply, or they ring up the Ombudsman and are told about the rule, so they never officially reply. The bottom line is we must get rid of the 6-year rule. We will get into the detail of how that is to be done at later stages, but from our side we want the greatest possible number of people to benefit from this change. A limiting definition of a long-term product that lets people down should be resisted. In 2014, the Free Legal Advice Centre, FLAC, published their report titled Redressing the Imbalance, a study of the legal protections available for consumers of credit and other financial services in Ireland. Deputy Pearse Doherty engaged with FLAC to get their well-researched and consumer-centred recommendations into law. The main aims of this report are to be found in that report. It is a tribute to FLAC that this bill has won widespread support. Senators might be aware that the Government has produced its own legislation. It is a broader piece of legislation which merges the offices of the Financial Services Ombudsman and the Pensions Ombudsman. We will get our chance to scrutinise that bill at a later stage when it comes before us. Clearly, it is in the interests of all, especially consumers, that the two bills are complementary. But it is no coincidence that the Government's bill has followed hot on the heels of Deputy Doherty's bill. I will now clearly address other sections of the bill. Section 1 contains the definitions as normal. Section 2 contains the definitions of the long-term financial service. This section, along with Section 5, are the sections which remove the 6-year rule. This definition is critical because it determines what services and products can be complained about even outside the old 6-year rule. I am clear that the definition should not be limited by a definition which includes further qualifications, although of course the will of the House will decide on the final wording. Section 5 lays out how the new rules will work. Instead of a blanket 6-year ban on complaints, consumers will now be able to make a complaint within the 6 years or within the 3 years of becoming aware of the breach. This is the model used in Britain and Australia. There will be a backstop of 2002 and a final cut-off of 6 years since the product ended for practical reasons. The section is also very clear that this provision will be retrospective in nature. People in the past turned away because of the 6-year rule will be free to reapply under the new rules. Section 3 is a small amendment which now means that the Ombudsman will operate without undue technicality. This flows from FLAC's report's finding that gives the Ombudsman a clear legal mandate to operate informally. The courts could end up using this provision against the Ombudsman. Sections 4, 7 and 9 are consequent to each other. The substantive change is that whilst before the Ombudsman was limited to 3 possible findings, it can now make 4 findings. Up until now, he was limited to make a complaint to be upheld, to be partly upheld or rejected. This narrow range of choices means some consumers who are in effect have been found against were still being told that their complaint had been partly upheld. This bill allows for 4 findings upheld: substantially upheld, substantially rejected or rejected. The wider range allows for a more accurate result to be given to consumers. Section 6 introduces a new method to encourage mediation as the primary tool of the Ombudsman. I am glad to say that the mediation has become more and more norm for the service. I wish to indicate that I am considering an amendment to this section to further strengthen the focus on mediation. Section 8 increases the window in which consumers or indeed financial institutions can make an appeal to the High Court if they are not satisfied with the ruling of the Ombudsman. Currently, there is only a 21-day window, which this bill will increase to 35. Of course, the Court can ultimately make its own rules in this regard. At this juncture, I should point out that the original bill contained changes so that an appeal could be made to the Circuit Court. These sections were deleted at committee stage in the Dáil, but that conversation about access to justice is one we must keep on bringing up and keeping our eyes on. I hope all sides can support this bill. I think back to the title of the 2014 FLAC report, Redressing the Imbalance, and believe that if we pass this bill, we will have achieved a real levelling of the playing field for consumers. I hope it can be passed tonight and that we will be back here as soon as possible to finalise it so it can be enacted. So I am looking for assurances from the Minister tonight that the Government are genuine in their approach to this bill and genuine in their response and to the urgency of this bill in order to protect our citizens. Thank you.
Walsh, to conclude, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Laska Herlick, and thank you, Minister. And I think from hearing your response, we have more in common than divides us. And I certainly do as well accept your bona fide. And I'm glad that you mentioned days rather than anything else, that you realise the urgency of this bill. And I accept that there may be, you may have very genuine amendments in terms of the long-term service, and particularly that you talked about in Section 2. But if you could let us have that amendment as soon as possible, so obviously we can get agreement on that. But you will know from the Finance Committee as well that insurers are going to use this as an excuse to raise premiums anyway. But that's what it would be, is just an excuse. And I think from the insurance report and all of those things that we can work those protections in there, and we shouldn't just delay this bill or deter it because of the behaviour of insurers as it is. Other things can be put in place there. I do want to thank Pierce as well. And he's not still here. Oh, he is. He's moved. And welcome Pierce House. And I forgot until it was said that actually Pierce was at one time in this house as well. So he can feel our pain sometimes. And some of our biggest pain in this house is the lack of legislation. And this presents us with an ideal opportunity to bring forward and push forward this legislation that was carefully prepared by Deputy Doherty and indeed by, I should mention, Declan as well in Pierce's office, and Seamus for his input. But and everybody, as you mentioned there, Minister, that contributed to making this bill what it is to be before us here today. And if there are very minor tweaks that we need to do, we can do that quickly, and we can do it in a collaborative way. And I do want to thank Senator Boyhan for his comments as well in terms of, and Fianna Fáil, of course, yourself, Jerry, from Finance Committee. No, but I think it's hugely important, because what's to the front and centre of this bill is the consumers that we need protection for. And it is our job here, whether we come from Mayo or Cork or Limerick or wherever we do, is to put in place the instruments that are the Dubs. We can't forget the Dubs until September anyway. But to put in place the instruments that are going to protect people, and this is what we need to do. So this is our opportunity to make a difference in the lives of people by passing this legislation, to make a difference in the lives of people who have been wronged by financial institutions. And we know, again, for those of us on the Finance Committee and others, that thousands of customers have been robbed by the banks, that have been forced off tracker mortgages by the banks and from rates that they are legally entitled to. They are still waiting for justice, which I believe is a crime in itself. And these aren't victimless crimes. These people are waiting. They have been robbed of their money. It's cost some people their lives. It's cost people their relationships, their family lives and everything else. And what we're trying to do here is a minor bit for a certain number of people, well, for thousands of people across here that we can do, and we shouldn't take this lightly. This bill provides us with an opportunity to facilitate justice for thousands of people. It has already been scrutinised, and as you said, many people have inputted into it. But I do want to commend the leadership of Deputy Doherty in showing this leadership and the courage to stand up to these institutions and say as legislators, we are no longer prepared to let this happen on our watch. And I think this is what the enactment of this legislation would do. So I'm saying now let's get it finalised and let it get enacted. Time should never be a barrier to justice. Our only focus is in providing the legal instruments, as I said, to protect the rights of people dealing with financial institutions. And this will send a clear message out to financial institutions as well, that we are no longer willing to accept their behaviour, and that where things need to be put right, they are put right, and collectively they are put right under the leadership of Deputy Doherty in terms of this bill, with the input of many. So thank you very much, Cathaoirleach, and thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Senator Conway-Walsh.